And I'm glad to be introducing our next speaker, who's been kind enough to visit with us. Y'all have followed the news in the last few days and know the incredible things going on in our country right now. So I'm especially grateful, Leader Pelosi, that you would take time to come join us here and speak to the San Antonio delegation. So I want to thank you for joining us today to share a few words about your work helping chart the course for our party and our country in these busy and unpredictable times. It's an honor to work with you in the House of Representatives because of everything that you've done on behalf of the nation. And to give you a sense of her background, for nearly 30 years now, she's been serving the people of California in Congress. And as you all know, for 4 of those years, she was a Speaker of the House, the only woman Speaker who has ever led the House of Representatives. Although I've been here a short time in Congress, I've watched her relentlessly push for policies that will grow our economy and strengthen American families. In fact, just this fall, she traveled to San Antonio and joined me for a discussion with folks from local businesses and schools to hear suggestions about how Congress can better support their companies and the next generation of Texas and San Antonio innovators. So with that, one more story though. When she came into Congress in the 1980s, right? I believe 1987, I believe you were assigned to the Banking Committee back then, and the chairman of the Banking Committee was Henry B. Gonzalez, our congressman, and so she formed a great friendship with him. Please welcome and thank you.
Thank you very much, Congressman Castro. Victoria, thank you for recognizing the work of this great member of Congress. Thank you all for sending him to Congress. San Antonio is beautifully represented by Congressman Castro, Congressman Cuellar a little bit, Congressman Doggett in a significant way, and then we work in a bipartisan way with Congressman Hurd and Congressman Smith. So it's my honor to join them in welcoming you to the Capitol. Once again, I'm honored to receive an invitation to join in welcoming you. You mentioned Henry Gonzalez, and when Victoria was speaking about the centennial of the port of the area, I was thinking that in the past year, I joined Charlie Gonzalez in celebrating the centennial of Henry Gonzalez's birth. This is sort of a family affair. I served with Henry and I served with Charlie Gonzalez. I know Mr. Doggett is right here, Mr. Doggett, and considered it a great honor to do so. I said in the film that made for his centennial, the centennial of his birth, that he was probably one of the greatest people ever to serve in the Congress of the United States. And so then we have another family, the Castro family, making such a big contribution to our country's economic growth, the future of our children and all the rest. And my family, my kids live in Houston. They love to go to San Antonio. It's a drive, but it's worth it for them. 3 boys three teenage boys who live in Houston, so I feel a very close tie. As Mr. Doggett knows, how long have you been, Doggett, Lloyd, in Congress?
Beginning year 23, but you're 4 in San Antonio.
You're 4 in San Antonio. Thank you for your great service to our country. So you do come at a very interesting time, and I want to commend your chairman of the board, Weaver, and President Cavazos, and as well as Richard Perez, in addition to our colleagues in the Congress. We come at a very interesting time, and Victoria mentioned the port, and ports are very, very important in terms of the economic vitality of our communities. I thank you for your leadership roles as entrepreneurs, because small businesses, as we know, are where jobs are created, capital is formed, and our economy is strengthened and grown. So I look forward to hearing the results of your communications on this visit. It is a time when the president has said he's going to renegotiate NAFTA. As one who voted for NAFTA at the time, I think every trade agreement that we have should be subjected to review, but we have to do it in a careful manner, understanding the ramifications of what change can bring in that regard. The president has not as yet notified Congress that he is going to move forward with that, but he probably will. I know he talked to the Canadian Prime Minister the other day about it. So, so we have to listen to all of you to say if there are changes, what are the impact of them, and let's do the right thing by our relationship as well as among the countries, but also what it means to our companies, what it means to our workers. And I probably should have started with the workers. But in any event, I thank you again for your leadership in that regard. In terms of our national security, which is our first responsibility in government, I'm so pleased that Congressman Castro serves on national security committees. He's a great leader he's been a great leader on the Armed Services Committee, now serving on the Intelligence Committee. I only have 9 appointments to the Intelligence Committee out of the nearly 200 members. So this is a prized and coveted responsibility, and one that is taken very seriously by our caucus and by our member. And I'm so proud of his work. They're effective from the start already, as Victoria referenced, a leader on the cybersecurity issue, which is probably one of the most important issues because it affects everything. With his National Cybersecurity Preparedness Consortium Act bolstering our national security, allowing universities, other nonprofit groups to work with Homeland Security to reduce risk and incidents at banks, businesses, and local and state, because this affects people very directly in their business and personal lives as well as our national security. So thank you, Joaquin, for that. It's a curious time. We want facts and evidence as we make decisions and go forward. We want to do so in a way that is as nonpartisan as possible. We have differences of opinion which need to be respected, come with different perspectives from the people that we represent. But the most important thing is that we honor our oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution and the American people, and that we do so in a way that puts our responsibilities to our country before any responsibilities or calls for action from party. So again, you come at a time of great patriotism in our country where very difficult decisions will have to be made. The more information we have to base those decisions, the better. I did want to hear your questions, because it's no use my talking to you about what we think is important here. It's more important to hear what questions you may have about how we go forward. Again, thanking the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce and all of you who are here for your leadership, as well as the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, with which I've worked nationally and locally here. So with that, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I just want to shout out for Julian. He made us all very proud as Secretary of HUD, and Rose is a heroine to all of us, and her mother a super heroine for bringing this beautiful family to America. This is the constant reinvigoration of America. Is our immigrant community. Every newcomer who comes with his or her aspirations for making the life better for their families, that optimism, that courage, that determination for a better future, well, those are American ideas: optimism, courage, determination for a better future. It's called the American dream. So I always say that every newcomer who comes with those goals makes America more American. So I thank you for the support that you give for recognizing that important contribution to our country. With that, I'd be pleased to take any questions you may have. Yes, sir. Hi.
How do you see the next 90 days playing out?
Well, history is in a hurry. History is in a hurry here. Hopefully, things will settle down. I always say to people, let's just take a deep breath. Let's just take a deep breath for America, for our country. There is no question that there is disarray in the White House, that the lack of experience and the disregard for certain protocols on how things are done have produced some bad results or bad events. Hopefully they're not a result. For example, the ban was ill-conceived and not vetted by those people the president had appointed to do the vetting. So to take that one example, he went around his own people with standing and authority and resources, intellectual resources within their agencies to do something that he wanted to do, whether you agree with it morally or not. From a constitutional standpoint, they didn't even do it right. So it is hopefully learning from what they did. This is about the president's judgment. Let me just say this, and I hope and pray for the president. I do pray for him. I pray for him because he's the president of the United States. But his judgment has been impaired by his appointments that he has made, and now they're withdrawn. And let me just say this, because I think it's important to note this. People are saying, well, it's only the first 3 weeks. It's almost going to be 4 weeks pretty soon. Friday, 4 weeks. In the first 4 weeks of the Obama administration, the president stood on the steps of the Capitol on January 20th, and he said, I want swift, bold action now. I want swift, bold action now to create jobs and education for the education system for the 21st century. 1 week and 1 day later, the House passed the Recovery Act. 1 week later, the Senate passed the Recovery Act. On February 15th, that would be this Friday, 4 weeks from his swearing in, a bill was signed by the president that created or saved 4 million jobs in our country. Because the election's about jobs. It's always about jobs. 4 weeks from the president's swearing in now, there is not even a jobs initiative. We were looking for the infrastructure initiative. We haven't seen that, and that would be an important place for us to work together. The president has proffered his anti-trade message, saying he's going to renegotiate NAFTA, but he hasn't brought that forward. Whatever you think about NAFTA, he hasn't brought that forward. So there are many things that they said they were going to do that they haven't done, and instead they seem to be running around in circles. I'm just talking to you as family here. I mean, it's no use wasting your time, right? You asked me what I think. So again, we have to hope and pray that some order, quite frankly, you know what somebody said to me, what advice would you give somebody going to the White House now with all of the internecine warfare that is going on there? I said, if you're going to go work in the White House, know your blood type. It's a rough place. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. My name is Rebecca Villagrán. I'm a city councilwoman.
Oh, congratulations.
Myself, I'm one of three. My other colleague, Councilwoman Shirley Gonzalez.
Hi, Shirley.
San Antonio. Here in San Antonio, as you know, we are very intertwined with Mexico and our relationship with
Yeah.
Mexico. A couple of issues. Two are about taxing. We're looking at a whole tax overhaul right now. Two of the items are, one, to get your thoughts on a border adjustment tax and kind of that impact that would have on Texas in general, not only large corporations, but also the small businesses in the city of San Antonio. And then two, a removal of tax exemptions to our municipal bonds. As you know, municipal bonds are vital for some of the infrastructure growth in our cities and our local municipalities. So to get some of your insights, but those are two of really big topics for the city and the state. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councilwoman, and to both of you. Congratulations on your leadership. It's wonderful to see young women in these positions. You are very blessed to have Lloyd Doggett on the Ways and Means Committee, an expert on all of these matters and a champion. My own view is that we have to fight the border tax. I mean, this is let me say, there are ideas and there are notions. This does not rise to the level of an idea. This is a notion. And they're notion mongers. So they put this notion out there. I don't know how much support it will ever get. The Speaker supports it. Speaker Ryan supports it. But in our Democratic caucus, it is widely opposed. Would that be accurate? Under the leadership of Lloyd Doggett, who knows firsthand the impact that would have. And then on the municipal bonds, well, the mayors are constantly in my office. Joaquin, Julian when he was mayor, but even after that, in my office, as well as governors, but especially the mayors, on how we do not cap the deduction so that it hurts the municipal bond. That remains to be seen. It's a fight. As you know, the cap was going to be 28%. You can use it any way you want. but 28% was, I put me down as one who was saying that shouldn't apply to the muni bonds, the munis, because it really hurt what you just said, the investment in infrastructure, the creation of jobs, and the rest. At the end of the day, the result is that you're not getting more growth, and that's what this should be about. Now, I come from a family of mayors. My father was mayor for 12 years. When I was in first grade and all the way when I was in college, he was still mayor. My brother was mayor of Baltimore, so I come down in favor of the cities in this regard. I'm sympathetic to the muni bonds. Do we have time for one more question or not? Yes, sir.
Leader Pelosi, my name is Dr. Esteban Lopez. I'm the chairman of the board for the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And there are three things that really are important to us in the Hispanic Chamber. Several that are occurring here. But to reiterate what the councilwoman said, we have a strong interest in keeping our relationship with Mexico. So the issue of taxation on exports or imports are going to be issues that are concerning to us and our membership.
Yeah.
How would you suggest that we work with both parties to be able to communicate how this would affect our members and our businesses in San Antonio and in South Texas? And second, the issue of the wall and the optics around the wall and how that creates a vilification of Latinos in not only in Texas but across the United States.
Thank you so much for your questions. In terms of how to communicate with your members, nothing is more eloquent to a member of Congress than the voice of his or her own constituents. So as you communicate with them, make sure that you're communicating with your own member of Congress, of which you have 5, and that your views are known. You may or may not agree on whether NAFTA should be renegotiated, but you do agree that if it is, it has to be done in a way that is beneficial to the growth that the trade relationship provides to San Antonio. And there's a way to do that. There's a way to do that. I am philosophically, politically, officially, personally, religiously, spiritually opposed to the wall. So, I mean, come on. Come on. I try to say to our members, you know, I spend a lot of time on the border. I've been to almost every place on the border, of course, from Tijuana, connecting California, but McAllen, Brownsville, every place down there, and Laredo, El Paso, San Antonio. And what I say to our members, this is a community with a border going through it. Think of it that way. The exchange of ideas, of kids going to school, of commerce, of family, all the rest of that. Take that into consideration. And don't have a cowardly act like a wall that says we have to build a wall because we're not capable of protecting our border any other way. We can do some things. We can do things with technology and manpower and person power and the rest of that. But a wall is beneath the dignity of the United States of America. And it dishonors our responsibility to our hemisphere. Last year I took a delegation in the hemisphere to Mexico, Peru, and Chile to talk about TPP was one of the subjects, some pro, some con, but all very interesting. And I was thinking when we were in Mexico City and being greeted by the president, the foreign minister, and the rest of it, what a heightened civilization we are in here. I mean, it is such a Mexico is such a fabulous place. You never know it to hear what was going on in the campaign. I thought, I wish they could all come here and see how much benefit we get culturally in every possible way from our relationships. And I do think we have to spend more time focusing on our hemisphere, including the U.S.-Mexico relationship. Congresswoman Linda Sanchez, who's vice chair of our caucus, is head of the parliamentary group, U.S.-Mexico parliamentary group, and we want to intensify the communication relationship between our two countries. But when we talk about infrastructure, we're not talking about building a wall. We're not talking about building a wall. So who's going to pay for it? Today, the far right in the Republican caucus came out and said they're not going to be for a wall if it's not paid for. So what does that come from? Does that come from education? Does it come from investments in our future and scientific research and the rest? And since I mentioned education, because it's a key issue in everything. If we're going to keep America number one, we have to be number one in research and development. All that innovation begins in the classroom. And if you could take home one thought from me, apart from know your blood type and I'm opposed to the wall, this. Nothing. When people say we have to reduce Pell Grants and any assistance to education, understand this. Nothing brings more money to the Treasury than investments in education. Early childhood, K through 12, higher education, post-grad, lifetime learning for our workers. So to say I'm going to reduce the deficit by cutting education is not smart. In fact, it's dumb, because it does the exact opposite. You want to reduce the deficit, invest in education. It is an investment. And again, it is upward mobility for all of our communities, that invigoration that immigration brings to our country, realized through education and the rest. And I know in the Hispanic community that is a very high priority, and other communities as well, as the answer. For self-fulfillment for the individual, for America's economy to succeed, and for us to be number one in innovation and the rest. And presidents have always, President Eisenhower, Republican and Democratic president, have supported that. We have a little bit of a fight of that here in terms of priorities. We say, don't build a wall, build schools. So thank you all very much for sending Joaquin, for sending Lloyd Doggett to the Congress, for sending Henry Cuellar. Thank you all very much. Thank you.